The opulent first-class cabin fell silent as the flight attendant stepped in front of Elena's path. "Ma'am, I believe there's been a misunderstanding," she said coolly. "This section is reserved exclusively for first-class passengers." The piercing stares of the affluent travelers cut through Elena like shards of glass, her valid ticket openly challenged. No one could have predicted that within moments, Javier Castillo Billionaire, Elena's devoted husband, and the majority owner of this very airline would stride through the door, flipping the cabin's power dynamics upside down. Elena Torres fidgeted with the watch on her wrist, a cherished gift from Javier that marked their first encounter. At 35, her understated yet refined dress stood in stark contrast to the glittering jewelry and designer outfits filling the priority boarding area. The first-class cabin of Horizon Airways sparkled with plush leather seats, impeccably uniformed staff, and the faint scent of freshly poured champagne. Javier had insisted she take this solo trip as a treat for the triumphant charity gala she'd orchestrated. "You deserve every luxury life has to offer," he'd told her before rushing off to an urgent meeting, promising to join her at the resort shortly after. Elena inhaled deeply and presented her first-class ticket to the gate attendant. It was time to embrace a taste of the extravagance she typically shunned, despite being married to one of the nation's wealthiest men. "I'm sorry, but this area is for first-class passengers only," announced Vanessa Harper, the lead flight attendant, her eyes raking over Elena's modest attire with icy judgment. Her sharp tones sliced through the air. Tall and meticulously polished, Vanessa's blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun, her crisp navy uniform accented with gold stripes that she wore like symbols of dominance rather than duty. "I have a first-class ticket," Elena replied evenly, offering her boarding pass. Vanessa snatched it with the tips of her fingers, as though it might taint her pristine French manicured nails, which gleamed under the cabin's soft lighting. There seems to be some sort of mix-up," she said, her perfectly arched brows lifting in mock confusion. "Perhaps there was an error in the system." She turned the ticket over dramatically, her lips tightening into a skeptical pout. A man in a tailored suit glanced up from his financial newspaper, his gold cufflinks glinting as he lowered his glasses. "Happens all the time," he remarked, loudly enough for the cabin to hear. "Economy's getting too full these days." A few first-class passengers looked upsome with thinly veiled smirks, others with uneasy curiosity. A couple in coordinated designer were exchanged whispers, their gazes flickering between Elena and her unassuming outfit. Vanessa flashed a saccharine smile, her dazzling white teeth bared. "Let me see if there's a spot for you in the back. I'm sure you'll feel much more comfortable there." The word dripped with subtext. "You don't belong here." Elena's cheeks flushed, heat creeping up her neck. "Please check again," she said, holding her composure. "My husband booked this seat for me specifically." Years of training as a flight attendant herself steadied her voice. "Your husband?" A woman with a diamond necklace the size of a walnut chuckled, her tone thick with mockery. "Sweetheart, everyone pulls that card when they're fishing for an upgrade. Next, you'll say he's a CEO or something equally imaginative." Soft laughter rippled through the cabin as Vanessa signaled another crew member with a knowing glance. Elena brushed her fingers over the watch Javier had given her on the day they met back when she was still a flight attendant. The cool metal grounded her, memories of her simpler life before him fueling her resilience. She'd faced bias before, but never anticipated it from peers in a profession she once adored. A businessman nearby tapped his armrest impatiently. "Some of us have places to be," he muttered to no one in particular. "Can we sort this out and get moving?" Vanessa straightened her already flawless posture. "Please wait here while I clear up this misunderstanding," she said with a smile that never reached her eyes. "It might be best if you step back to the gate while we sort this out." Her tone left no room for debate. Elena wrestled with a storm of emotions, humiliation, frustration, and a spark of defiance. She could easily drop Javier's name, the principal shareholder of Horizon Airways, and turn the tables in an instant. But something held her back. Why should she need his title to earn basic respect? The cabin manager approached, his face stern beneath his neatly positioned cap. "Ma'am, we seem to have an issue with your reservation. I'll need you to step off the plane while we address it." His voice was professional but unyielding, brooking no resistance. The mix of pity and scorn from the other passengers pressed down on her as Elena fought to keep her dignity intact. A woman in her 60s, dripping in sapphires, clucked her tongue disapprovingly. A young executive typing on his laptop barely hid a smirk. "My ticket is legitimate," Elena said quietly but firmly. "I belong here." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Security protocols, ma'am. We can't allow just anyone in first class without proper verification." The phrase "just anyone" lingered, heavy with implication. At that moment, the aircraft door swung open again. It parted with calculated precision, revealing Javier Castillo's commanding figure. Standing 6 feet 2 inches with broad shoulders, his presence demanded attention effortlessly. His flawless navy Tom Ford suit hugged his frame, the silver at his temples lending a distinguished air to his dark, executive-style hair. The cabin hushed. Javier's piercing gray eyes swept the space methodically before settling on Elena, cornered by the staff. His face remained impassive, though those who knew him might catch the faint tension around his eyes, a subtle sign of the restrained anger simmering beneath his calm demeanor. "Elena," Javier's deep, steady voice filled the cabin without effort. "Is there a problem?" Vanessa and the manager traded panicked looks, their earlier confidence dissolving. "Sir, we're just sorting out a minor seating issue," the manager stammered, his tone abruptly deferential, his posture shifting to accommodate this unforeseen twist. Javier advanced down the aisle with the relaxed assurance of a man who owned not just the plane, but the moment itself. Passengers instinctively shrank back as he passed. "But that's my wife's seat, correct?" "Two-way." His voice carried a trace of his Spanish roots, a melodic edge that underscored its authority. "Your wife," Vanessa echoed, her face paling as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. A ripple of whispers electrified the cabin. Javier positioned himself beside Elena, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a gesture both tender and possessive. His 6-figure watch caught the light subtly, a quiet statement of wealth to those who noticed. "Yes, Elena Torres Castillo, my wife." "Has there been an issue with her seating?" Though polite, his question bore the weight of a man accustomed to answers. The manager's poise faltered visibly. "Mr. Castillo, we had no idea. We were just following protocol to verify what exactly?" Javier cut in, his gaze unwavering as it shifted from the manager to Vanessa, pinning them in turn. "Whether she belongs in first class based on how she looks?" The cabin plunged into a silence, so thick it seemed to mute even the sound of breathing. As the gravity of their error ran, his identity dawned on everyone. "Mr. Castillo, we didn't know." Vanessa stuttered, her arrogance evaporating, her uniform's gold pins trembling with her shaking hands. Sweat glistened along her hairline, threatening her flawless makeup. Javier's presence swelled, dominating the space without a raised voice or sharp movement. At 45, he exuded the quiet confidence of a self-made titan, his empire forged through intellect and resolve. "Clearly," he said, the single word landing like a gavel. His sharp gray eyes took in every detail Elena's discomfort, her shoulders slightly hunched despite her grace, the passengers' wide-eyed stares, some now tapping their phones as recognition set in. The crew's sudden shift from haughty to submissive. "Did you know," he began, his voice calm but weighted, "that before we married, Elena was the youngest lead flight attendant in Horizon Airways history?" His hand stayed protectively at her back. "She knows more about protocol and service than likely anyone here." A collective murmur ran through the seats. The woman with the diamond necklace now buried herself in the in-flight magazine, twisting her wedding band nervously. The businessman who'd griped about delays suddenly found his loafers riveting. She once spotted a passenger's symptoms mid-flight before he even knew he was ill. Javier went on, a note of pride softening his tone. Save his life. The airline honored her with a commendation that's still displayed at headquarters. I'm starting to wonder if anyone here has bothered to look at it. Vanessa's face turned ashen. The manager tugged at his collar, a bead of sweat trailing down his temple. I delayed this flight to surprise my wife, Javier continued evenly. It seems I arrived just in time. The pause before in time carried a subtle menace. He turned to the manager, who clutched his cap like a lifeline. As the majority shareholder of Horizon Airways, I'm troubled by what I've seen here today. The words majority shareholder hit like a silent explosion. A passenger by the window gasped audibly. Vanessa gripped a seat back to steady herself, her knuckles white. Mr. Castillo, the manager croaked, I assure you, this was a one-off mistake. Javier raised a hand, silencing him instantly. Mistakes have consequences, don't they? His tone was almost casual, amplifying the unspoken threat. He pulled out his phone, typing swiftly. I've just emailed the board. Starting tomorrow, all Horizon Airways staff will undergo mandatory anti-discrimination training. He fixed Vanessa with a steady look. MS. Harper, you'll be the first to attend. She swallowed hard, speechless, her career teetering before her eyes. As for the open director of customer experience role we've been discussing, Javier added, turning to the manager, I believe my wife with her past expertise and today's first-hand experience says ideally suited to step in, if she's interested. Elena's eyes widened briefly, caught off guard by the suggestion, before she regained her composure. Javier then addressed the cabin at large, his voice clear without being loud. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. To make up for it, champagne will be on the house for the flight. Then, in a quieter tone that still carried to those nearby, he added to Vanessa, please ensure my wife is properly cared for during the trip. Your future here depends on it. Vanessa nodded mutely, her reign of superiority reduced to rubble in minutes. She stepped back, signaling the crew to start service, the irony and the lesson lost on no one. The businessman who dismissed Elena now watched with respect, not just for Javier's authority, but for Elena's grace under fire. Later, at the lavish beachfront resort, Elena and Javier sipped wine on their suite's private balcony, the sunset painting the ocean gold. The flight had continued in tense quiet, Vanessa serving Elena with exaggerated deference while avoiding her gaze. You've always had a flair for dramatic entrances, Elena teased, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Javier chuckled. Not quite the reunion I'd planned, but I'll admit it was gratifying to see their faces. Elena gazed at the sea, thoughtful. You know, I've spent years dodging your name and status. I wanted to be seen from me, not as Mrs. Castillo. And you've done that, Javier assured her. The charity event you pulled off raised more for kids in need than any before it. She touched the watch he'd given her long ago, hesitating. Sometimes I miss my old independence, the career I was carving out. Javier studied her for a moment. That's why I created the director role. It's not a handout. Elenates because no one's better suited. Her eyes lit up with surprise. You planned this before the plane fiasco? He smiled. It was meant to be your anniversary gift. You've got the skills, the vision, and now you've seen exactly what needs fixing. Tears pricked her eyes unexpectedly. You never stopped believing in me, even when I wavered. He brushed the watch on her wrist. I told you when I gave you this time's the real luxury. How we spend it, and who we spend it with. Elena squeezed his hand, the sunset glinting off the watch that tracked not just ours, but their shared path. So, Javier asked gently, what does the future director of customer experience think about reshaping Horizon Airways? She smiled, feeling unburdened at last. I think it's time for a fresh start. What did you make of this unexpected turn? Did Javier's reveal as the airline's owner catch you off guard as much as it rattled that smug crew? It's a shame how often people get judged by their clothes, background, or looks without anyone knowing their real story or worth. Have you ever faced something like this or seen someone unfairly underestimated? Stick around for more stories that inspire, ones that make you rethink assumptions and celebrate treating everyone with dignity. Where are you tuning in from? Let me know what hit home for you, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that true value runs deeper than appearances. Until next time,